The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Close borders!
Close borders!
White nation!
White nation!
Now we start deportation!
Now we start deportation!
Close borders!
Close borders!
White nation!
White nation!
Now we start deportation!
Now we start deportation!
Close borders!
Close borders!
White nation!
White nation!
Now we start deportation!
Now we start deportation!
You were just listening to the sultry sounds of white supremacists in the state of Tennessee, and admittedly, I had to copy and paste their chant to make it repeat 3 times because they were so supremely incompetent that they couldn't do the chant even one time correctly. But I digress. There is an amazing story coming out of Tennessee that shows you just how committed some Americans, and I can drill down and say some white Americans, and I could drill down even closer and say most likely Republican Americans, conservative Americans are, how committed they are to not rectifying the problem of white supremacist violence in this country, or not even acknowledging it. The Tennessean.com is reporting that a resolution that was offered by a Democratic House committee member was not only shot down, but it wasn't even brought up to vote. And even worse, the Democratic House committee member could not get a second to his motion to even bring it up for a vote. According to the Tennessean.com, a House committee declined to pass a resolution that stated Tennessee denounces white nationalism and neo-Nazism. The sponsor, Representative John Ray Clemens, a Democrat from Nashville, didn't receive a second motion to proceed with discussing the resolution in the House State Government Subcommittee on Wednesday. Now, Clemens, according to thehill.com, Clemens is the only Democrat on the committee. So you have the rest Republicans. So earlier when I said most likely Republicans, I can now say all Republicans. But the Republicans on this committee refused to even give it a second so that it could come up for a vote or discussion, and subsequently shot down the resolution. And this is what the resolution said. It said, quote, "We strongly denounce and oppose the totalitarian impulses, violent terrorism, xenophobic biases, and bigoted ideologies that are promoted by white nationalists and neo-Nazis." I'm sorry, but that's not a difficult thing. It's not really a hard thing, with one exception, which is why I bring it up here for discussion today. It on the surface is an open and shut case, but the Republicans are opposing the specific language referring to neo-Nazism as domestic terrorism. And because of that specific language, according to the Tennessean, quote, it asks law enforcement agencies to consider the group's domestic terrorist organizations and to pursue criminal charges against them as police would in other types of terrorism. So to be sure, this resolution was more than just mere words. There was going to be the force of law behind it. But that to me still doesn't justify Republicans not even allowing it in the state of Tennessee to allow it to come up to vote, because we have this thing in America that has existed for quite some time where we only consider terrorism to be acts carried out by brown or black people, particularly brown people of Arabic descent, of Middle Eastern descent, rather. Because it's not, anyone from the region, Middle Eastern, North African nations, anyone from that region, you're in the category of terrorist if you do anything. Later on the show, we're going to talk about the young man who was killed in Austin, Texas. To us, everyone on the outside looking in, it's clearly an act of terrorism, but it's not being considered terrorism. And, we discussed this with regards to the NRA, and have outlined the case that the NRA is in and of itself a terrorist organization because they use intimidation. They use intimidation, which is a key component of the definition of terrorism. They use intimidation to get their political agenda across. But of course, there's the violence part of it. And These white supremacist organizations who have a political agenda, their agenda is to make America an ethno-state for white people only. But these groups not only use intimidation, but they use violence to accomplish their political ends, and that is the quintessential definition of terrorism. In 2017, 18 out of 34 U.S. extremist-related deaths were committed by white supremacist organizations, white nationalists, neo-Nazis, whatever you want to call them. They are the source of so much extremist violence in this nation that it's appalling that we won't even have the conversation about labeling them as domestic terrorists. I mean, what are we waiting? Is there a threshold? How many people do they have to kill before they're considered to be domestic terrorists? Right? Timothy McVeigh, who is the person that we look to when we think of the word domestic terrorist, he carried these ideologies with him. Those ideologies led to this. And you would think that, okay, that's a reaction to the election of a black man. You're going to see an increase in white supremacist organizations over the years. But it didn't stop with the election of Donald Trump. In fact, since 2017, neo-Nazi groups saw the greatest growth, soaring by 22%. This is according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. They, quote, soared by 22%. Anti-Muslim groups rose for a third straight year. So the election of Donald Trump did not mitigate their anxiety and their reaction to a black president. It actually exacerbated the problem, and they grew. And this leads to the core problem. And you already know where I'm going. You understand exactly why this subcommittee in Tennessee could not possibly consider having this discussion about whether or not neo-Nazi organizations, white supremacist organizations, even though they commit the most crime, the most extremist related murders in this country in 2017, the reason they can never have this conversation, you got it, it's because this is their base. These are their core supporters. How could they allow the conversation to hurt them politically? Or better yet, let me say it like this. They would never allow a decision that would hurt them politically. And if you don't believe that these are Donald Trump supporters, then look at Charlottesville. They dressed exactly like Donald Trump dressed. They wore Make America Great Again hats. If you don't believe that these neo-Nazis are directly supporters of Donald Trump, listen to this clip.
America was built by and for the white Christian people of this nation. I came here to speak on behalf of Donald Trump. I've never met the man, but I can tell that he has nothing but the best interest of this country in heart.
Some of the things that he's saying are issues that we've been tackling for years now. We talk about globalism, we talk about America first. These sort of things, bringing back American jobs. These are things that he's hitting on. So it's put a lot of our nationalism sort of becoming mainstream.
All we want is to change America back to what it was.
We do want to see whites, rise and have our own state here in this country.
And there it is. Yes, it's just one data point. But there obviously is the trend that if you are a neo-Nazi white supremacist in the United States of America in 2018, you are a supporter of Donald Trump. Just think about it logically. You think they're going to support Hillary Clinton? You think they were going to support Bernie Sanders, who is Jewish? You think they were going to support Barack Obama? These are supporters of the Republican Party. Now, they might not like the Republican Party, but the Republican Party is the closest thing to what they want and dream for in this country. And by supporting the Republican Party, they're able to block things like this because Republicans in Tennessee are clearly not going to alienate their supporters. And for what? To pacify some Democrat? No, absolutely not. And then if we go a little bit deeper, you understand that there are plenty of rewards for these white supremacist organizations in this Trump administration. Reuters reported back in February 2017 that the Trump administration was going to focus counter-extremism program solely on Islam, according to their sources. In other words, he was changing the focus of the counter-extremism program in the Department of Homeland Security from focusing on all extremism, including white extremism. But the plan was to change it so that it only focused on Islamic extremism. Now, where he is in this plan or implementation thereof, I do not know. There's not any update on that, but that was his declaration at the beginning of his administration. I don't have to make the case for you, but I'm making the case for somebody who still doesn't get it, that Donald Trump is in bed with white nationalists and neo-Nazis. And this trickles down to the state level. Or maybe we should say it differently. Maybe it actually trickles up, because this is not a Donald Trump phenomenon. This is an American phenomenon that starts on the state level, on these local small groups, these small neo-Nazi organizations, these paramilitary groups. They are here. They were here before Donald Trump. They're going to be here after Donald Trump. But right now they have an advocate in the White House by the name of Donald J. Trump.
About Donald Trump, we know that he lies, and I'm sorry for you out there that I was watching right now that don't think that Donald Trump is lying. Then that's a bigger problem than him actually lying. We know where Donald Trump is.
That was CNN's senior political analyst Mark Preston this morning discussing Donald Trump being the liar that he is. But in context, they were discussing the Washington Post article that outlines that obtained audio but didn't provide us with the audio. That's pretty whack, Washington Post, but I digress. They obtained an audio file of Donald Trump speaking to supporters at a fundraising speech, saying that he just made up a claim in a meeting with Justin Trudeau, just making up the facts, just because that's just what he does. And the context of the claim is that Justin Trudeau met with the president of the United States. The president of the United States insisted that we had a trade deficit with Canada. And Justin Trudeau said, "No, that's not true." And so it turns out that Donald Trump insisted that, no, it is true. It is true. And they sent their guys out to find out if it was true. Donald Trump said he knew that he did not know whether or not it was true or not. He just said it anyway because he had the feeling, right? That's just what he does. And so it turns out that, no, we don't have a trade deficit with Canada. Now, is it a big deal that the president of the United States lies? Yes, it is, even though we have gotten used to the president of the United States lying. Is it a big deal? Is it a bigger deal that he's lying to another head of state? Yes, it is, even though we've gotten used to that. And I'm sure presidents in the past have lied to other heads of states, probably on things more serious, far more serious than this. Guaranteed on things far more serious than this. Does it matter that the president of the United States mocked the head of state? Another head of state? The answer to all of these questions is yes. The problem is exactly what Mark Preston said at the beginning. If you don't know or don't care that Donald Trump is lying, then you are the bigger problem than Donald Trump's lies. Last night, I tweeted out that Donald Trump is unstoppable amongst his base. And unfortunately, he's unstoppable just outside the margins of his base, right? Let's say his core base is 30. It looks like he bottoms out around 33%. Those are the core base supporters of Donald Trump. Those are the people who went to Charlottesville, Virginia. Those are the people who are in these neo-Nazi organizations, and somehow they intersect with evangelicals who still support Donald Trump. That's his core group. But just outside of those margins, if you go to like 40%, maybe even 45%, 49%, those are the people who are indifferent to Donald Trump's lies and hypocrisy. And therein lies the problem that we are facing in this country moving forward. The result of hyperpartisanism, that they don't care how their president makes them look like fools or hypocrites. They don't care how much the president of the United States lies to them. They don't care how much the president of the United States embarrasses us on the international stage. They don't care how detrimental the president's policies are to their own pocketbook. some of them he's very beneficial to, but then there's a whole core of them who voted for him and still support him, who are getting plundered and they're getting destroyed by this tax plan, and they don't even know it yet. They still support the president of the United States. And the ultimate problem is that there might just be enough support for Donald Trump for him to win in 2020. This man can get away with anything with his core group. For others, he can't get away with anything. He can't get away with sneezing the wrong way, right? That's the counterbalance of opposition, right? That's going to happen. And I'll talk about it a little bit more, but I understand the Rachel Maddows of the world. I understand the people who are taking a hardline opposition to Donald Trump. No matter what he does, he's going to be wrong. I understand it from the context of a countervailing force, because there's the opposite side of the equation that no matter what Donald Trump does, he is always going to be right in the eyes of these people. And they are the biggest problem, because they don't go away once Donald Trump goes away, mind you. They don't care. They are going to carry this. See, Donald Trump is actually just loosening them up a little bit. Now they can be themselves. Now they can relax. Now they can be as openly hypocritical evangelicals as they want to be, because they've survived the storm. They had to show how it is that they could support Donald Trump and still be a Christian, even though Donald Trump is the antithesis of Christ. Now they've weathered that storm. Now they could just be full-blown hypocrites no matter what the circumstance. It's that much easier for them to support a person who's not as disgusting as Donald Trump, because they managed to pull off supporting Donald Trump. And what does this all mean? This means that these problems that we're facing right now with the electorate and these type of voters will not go away after Donald Trump. This doesn't mean that we don't get rid of Donald Trump. We do. It absolutely does not mean that we allow the House and the Senate to be under control of the Republicans and a fully controlled, the entire government fully controlled by Republicans. No, it does not mean that at all. But what that means is that we absolutely have to start reshaping the electorate. If we don't get more people involved in voting, then we're going to always be battling against this 33% of people that no matter what a madman like Donald Trump says or does, they worship the ground he walks on. And then that indifferent 17% who are like, well, he's passing legislation that we like, we'll just put up with him. Dramatic pause. Because 2020 is around the corner, and Donald Trump has proven that he is the new face of the Republican Party. He is the face of the Republican Party. And despite Jeff Flake's desire to have someone primary him,
I do hope that a Republican will challenge the president, and just to remind Republicans what Republicans stand for.
The bad news for Flake is that this is what the Republican Party stands for. This is who they are. They don't mind the lies. They don't mind the affairs. They don't mind the oafishness. They don't mind the lack of intellectual curiosity. They actually embrace those things. Sorry, Jeff Flake. I mean, you actually yourself benefited from this. You just didn't think it was going to go this far. You thought that you could play with a level of stupidity and a level of extremism, and thought that you were, in fact, Jeff Flake was the extremist when he ran. And he thought, well, that's, I wasn't that bad. I wasn't Donald Trump bad. But the problem is once you open up the Pandora's box of stupidity, the Neanderthals will run right in. And my apologies to the Neanderthals. So in yesterday's episode, we discussed the Pennsylvania 18th District race, special election that elected Connor Lamb. And I specifically wanted to make sure that I stated on the record the lessons that the Democrats should not learn. Because I just knew that they were going to do exactly what they're doing now. Jon-Favreau, who is a former speechwriter for President Obama and he is a part of Pod Save America, blah, blah, blah. He has a really good resume, so I'm not dismissing his resume. I am dismissing this tweet that he sent out yesterday that got 83,000 likes and 21,000 retweets. He said, Conor Lamb campaigned, number 1, for universal health care. That's not true. 2, against Trump's tax cut. Barely. 3, for expanded background checks. Sort of. 4, for stronger unions. 5, against cuts to Social Security. 6, for a woman's right to choose. John. And 7, for medical marijuana. And then he said, quote, conservative Democrat. Okay, cool. Nice sarcasm there. But your facts are wrong, John. And the problem is that there is a rewrite that Democrats are willing to do in order to try to make conservative Democrats, blue dog Democrats, which you're going to need some blue dog Democrats in districts like PA 18. That's just the way it is, right? We can't run socialist in red states. Not in every district. You know, you could pull 1 or 2, right? It's possible in 1 or 2 districts, but you're not going to be able to run socialists in every single district. So, but the problem is not that. The problem is that they're trying to convince themselves that people like Conor Lamb are actually progressive. And that's so unnecessary, right? And it's absolutely untrue. But I want to read a thread from Abigail Garner. She responded to it, and I tweeted this morning that Abigail is a boss. Be like Abigail. She said, no, he is not for universal health care. He explicitly said it was too expensive, did not campaign for a woman's right to choose. He said he's personally pro-life, but won't vote that away. He literally branded himself a conservative Democrat. Now, Abigail, if you're wondering who Abigail is just one of us, just a regular schmegular old Twitter user, not a lot of followers. You know, she probably does something amazing in the real world, but she doesn't have like that kind of Twitter resume that elicits a response. But her words alone garnered a response from John. So they interacted, and I want to finish reading her reply first. She said, I'm not trying to take away from his win at all, but let's be accurate. He did not want to see a raise in the minimum wage to $15 an hour. He was not for universal health care. He would not respond to Planned Parenthood when they reached out, and he's about to primary a woman candidate. John replied, they had a conversation. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. I put the link in the description along with links to everything else that was in the show today. But be like Abigail. Don't be like John. Don't lie to yourself. John, who is the professional politico with relationships from the White House to the outhouse, has it wrong and intentionally wrong. And this is the most disgusting part of the establishment Democrat agenda. The establishment Democrat playbook is actually the phrase I'm looking for. They're going to give us a blue dog Democrat and then try to tell us that they are progressive. Get the entire hell out of here. Like, I understand that the Democrats don't want to galvanize a new electorate. They don't want to go into PA 18 and find the disenfranchised or the disenchanted voters and pull them into the electorate. So they're going to be forced to run blue dog Democrats in these cases. I get that. But when you do that, don't turn around and tell us that they are actually progressive. The guy literally ran as a conservative Democrat. And now you're on Twitter trying to forward a lesson that I told you all yesterday. Do not forward. This is not the model of Democrat that you're going to need to run across the entire country, because you're going to lose. And it's going to do nothing for you in 2020. There are plenty of places where you can run socialist. There are. And socialists, I hear you. You're ready to jump on deck, but PA 18 was not the place to run a socialist or a far left progressive. It's not. Not unless everyone is going to get in there and do the work of cultivating a new electorate. But apparently people aren't going to learn the right lessons. So I'm probably going to have to repeat this again after the midterms. This was a performance last year by Draylen Mason. He is the 17-year-old African-American young man who was killed on Monday when a package exploded at his home. We covered the story, and what I didn't know at the time was that he was not the one who initially opened the package. But as Dre got ready to go and go for his morning workout, his mother opened the package, and Draylen understood that something was wrong. And so he threw himself in front of his mother, taking the full blast of the package, and died. The audio that you're listening to was provided by the family and given to Sean King, who shared it on Twitter. I will put a link in the description so that you can see the video. It's actually a video footage of Draylen performing, standing there proudly, performing masterfully for a 17-year-old. Like, my goodness, he was so talented and such a bright future ahead of him, and all taken away because of the hateful actions of someone, we don't even know who it is at this point, but someone who targeted that family, targeted a young black teen, previously killed a 39-year-old black father. Hate is so deeply rooted in this country that when it manifests, it lashes out in a violent way that causes pain and death and destruction. And I won't politicize this commentary, because if you want to know my thoughts about this, go back to the beginning of the podcast, because there is hate that is brewing in this country that we won't do anything about. And sadly, a family has lost a son, a brother. His brother on Twitter said, quote, "I've been lost in a nightmare all day." You know, this is the kind of pain that hate causes. It's bad enough that life is as bad as it is naturally, with natural disasters, with natural death and natural things that just happen because we are alive. But to compound it with the bitterness and the acrimony and the hatred of people who simply hate you because of your color, or they hate you because of your successes, or they hate you for whatever reason they hate you. And then we do nothing about it. And we see that this hate is concentrated in a very specific area, but we do nothing about it. This is what his brother said on Twitter also. He said, quote, "My little brother was a great young man. He was so full of life. I can't believe I have to bury my brother. I love you, Draylen. Just know your brothers will take care of everything here." I really don't have anything else to say. Listen to Draylen as he completed this performance a year ago, and go on the link in the description and click on it and watch him as he stands there professionally, proudly, and performs masterfully, and realize that hatred has taken this young brother away from us.